Okay, Carl, I got a couple of questions to ask you just before we get started on the formal questions. My question is, was it a cellist that you were?
Yeah, that's right, for a long time.
How does one go from a cellist to a lawyer to and a city dweller to a rural citizen out in the country with aspirations to be a counselor?
Well, okay, so cellist to lawyer. Well, yeah, I grew up in Brandon, Manitoba, which is actually a very musical town.
Okay.
People think of it maybe as a hockey town, agricultural town, which it is. It was actually a very musical town too. And my mother's family is very musical. My mother's father, so my maternal grandfather, was actually a very well-known violin teacher in Winnipeg. So yeah, they started me on violin. That didn't work out too well. So I ended up going over to cello, and that's really what I devoted the first, 35 years of my life.
Really?
Played with Toronto Symphony quite a bit, played in the Canadian Opera Company. That's how I met my wife, actually. She's a professional violinist in Kitchener.
Oh,
and, it's a hard way to make a living. It's a really hard way to make a living. And a lot of musicians, when you're looking to transfer into something else, there's not a lot of options, right? You can't go to medical school with a music degree.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to law school, though. You write the LSAT, the law school admission test. And really, that's you have to have an undergraduate degree, but they don't seem to care too much what it's in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I knew a number of musicians that had become lawyers, and I thought, well, I'll see if I get into law school. I don't think I thought I was going to get into law school, and lo and behold, I did. Well, I guess maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I started at the University of Toronto. Now, I started late. I started when I was 42. That was in 2008, fall of 2008. And then I worked for the Department of Justice. I was a federal prosecutor in Brampton, really prosecuting drug cases for a couple of years. And then I decided I'd had enough of prosecuting people, thought I might be more comfortable defending people, and I was offered a job with a small law firm that works sort of in the London-Kitchener area. My wife was working in Kitchener, and we thought, hey, let's move out to some place between London and Kitchener. And we found a lovely property in Oxford.
Perfect fit, right in between.
And here we are. Yeah.
So, how are you going to make time for counsel as a busy professional?
Well, I am busy, and that is a concern. I'm not going to deny that that's a concern. My two boys are older now. They're 19 and 22,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't require as much of my time as they used to. And I'm settled in. There's been a lot of steep learning curves. Obviously, law school was a steep learning curve. Becoming a prosecutor was a steep learning curve. Becoming a defense lawyer was a steep learning curve. But I hope that the steep learning curves are behind me. Well, if I become a counselor, that's going to be a steep learning curve, isn't it? But so I'm just, things are a little more settled, and I do feel like I can make the time.
Excellent. Okay, let me start with some of the questions that I received. Now, some of these questions are mine and some came in from the public.
Yep.
The majority of them from Ward 1, but there are some scattered out throughout the township. Basically, what can you bring to Ward 1?
Well, it seems to me, and maybe I'll preface this. My dad was a civil servant in the Manitoba Government of Agriculture, right? And I remember I was a teenager at one point, and he said, "Hey, Dad, who's the Minister of Agriculture?" And he told me right away, but he said, it's really not the minister that's running the show. It's the deputy minister who, is there for a much longer period of time and who gets much more experience in the job. And that's really, the minister is more of a figurehead. And I remember him saying that to me way back in the mid-'80s. And I think that's a danger in our system, right? And it's certainly, and I'm not saying it happens in Norwich Town Council, but it's definitely a danger, I think, in all municipal governments and perhaps all levels of government, that the people that come in, they're new, they might not be there that long, and you're dealing with the staff and the various senior officials in the township administration, and you want to get along, you don't want to go in and ruffle feathers. So you need to be the kind of person that can be firm and that can push back, or at least ask pointed questions when necessary. And I do feel that I'm that kind of person. I'm in court pretty much every day, and you better be ready for some back and forth, and you better be ready to answer tough questions, right? The other thing I want to say on that, this by-election is a special situation because unlike a general election, in a general election, all of the positions are up for election, right? So you really don't know who the team is going to be. But in the by-election, you know who the team is now, right? You know who the other councillors are, you know who the mayor is, you know who the 3 candidates are going for Ward 1. So what I would ask people to do is sort of get to know all of us. Fortunately, the election period's fairly long, I would say. Election day's not till May 6th. So you should have time to get to know all 3 of us, and then ask yourself, okay, which of the 3 plugs into this team the best? Who's got the chance to bring the most? And I can tell you, speaking to people that have been councillors, they do say having a lawyer on town council could be really, really helpful for lots of reasons. Look, I think my biggest strength as a lawyer is dealing with words. I think my strongest advocacy, frankly, is my written advocacy. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy writing, and gotten some accolades for my legal writing over the years, and I'd like to bring that to town council. Yeah.
Good. Let me move on.
Yeah.
Otterville, several years ago now, lost their Otterville Hall.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was a lot of noise about let's get another one built, but it's never happened. Mm-hmm. Where do you see that? How does that fit into your agenda?
Well, we're looking at a 9.91% tax hike, right? Mm-hmm. And we're looking at that tax hike's really high, and people are struggling. Not only are your property taxes going up, but your grocery bills going up. Gas prices seem to have settled a little bit, but they bounce around all the time. People are struggling, and I think we have to be really, really attuned to that. Look, another hall in Otterville would be lovely. I don't think this is the time. I think there's higher priorities. I can tell you, one of my priorities, which is expensive, it's going to be expensive, but I would put that higher on the list, is a proper bridge into Otterville Park. There's a swimming pool there. There's various recreation facilities. What if somebody has a heart attack? What if somebody, God forbid, gets hurt seriously, and we got to get an ambulance in there? Mm-hmm. As I understand things, it's dicey whether we can get one in, right? Yeah. We're reliant on the benevolence of a private citizen to get emergency vehicles, and that's not good. Right. So there's that, I'm sure you're aware of it, there's that little bridge that maybe you can get an ATV over, but not much else. So that, I would put that higher in terms of priorities, and again, that's expensive, but I'd like to see that happen.
Okay. This brings me to another question that has just come out of this answer.
Yeah.
I know that Norfolk has several units in their fire department.
Yeah.
That they have I believe they call it a quad or a Argo or something like that. They also have some smaller vehicles that they can access their trail system and so on. I don't think Norwich has any of that stuff. When I say Norwich, I mean the township. Would you see something like that in the future?
That sounds like a good idea.
It might, in lieu of the new bridge, it might be a cheaper way to go. How do you feel about that?
Well, hey Vic, it sounds like a good idea to me. Okay. Yeah, look, that maybe the way I'm thinking of that right here and now is maybe that's a Band-Aid that gets us over until we can get a proper bridge in. I think we got to get a proper ambulance over that bridge. Yes, I'm sure these quads, I don't know them that well. I'm sure they're better than nothing. That's for darn sure. Hey, maybe that's a good short-term solution. I'd certainly be open to it.
Great. So, Ward 1, and I'm going to say mainly Otterville and Springford, they're trying to do business each day, and they seem to not have very much in the way of a downtown. Do you foresee any way that you could help both those communities bring stores and business to the community?
Sure. Otterville doesn't have a downtown.
Well, they have a downtown, but it's not bustling. They've got one store that does really, really good there, and I think it's got the bulk of the business. But I don't know if Otterville is poised for, another store or not.
Well, I gotta say, I love downtown Otterville. I guess I'll call it downtown Otterville. I mean, the waterfall is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want, who knows what. We don't want a franchise going in there.
Okay.
I'd be very hesitant to mess with what's there now, just because I think it's gorgeous. I think it's, they got nothing like that in Woodstock. That's for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the Otterville people, and I think John Schulten had something to do with this as well.
Yeah.
They're to be commended for what they've done with the downtown.
Oh,
the dam is beautiful. They've got it well. It's a park area.
Yeah.
The mill is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think that probably is a very fitting answer.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay, so where do you stand on your priorities? Is it for Ward 1 or is it the entire township?
Both and, I can say that.
Okay.
Look,
Can you elaborate a bit?
yeah. Well, when you're a councillor, there's only 4 councillors, right? So when you're voting on, especially the larger projects, I know one of the things that's gone through is the plan to, I believe they're allocating $500,000 a year for 5 years to hard surface more of the gravel roads,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you're voting for that, I mean, you're voting for a township-wide project, right? So, I definitely want to have the best interests of the township front of mind all of the time. But on the other hand, I'm there for Ward 1, right? And I got to make sure Ward 1 gets its fair slice of the projects that get handed out. So I see this as being, the position as being a both and kind of situation.
Okay. This came up when I put out for some questions to ask.
Yeah.
And it's one of the questions that's a little bit awkward, but someone came right away and asked where you lived, or do you even live in Otterville?
Yeah.
Do you think that's an issue?
Oh yeah. No, I don't live in Ward 1, right? Yeah. No, I live up around Burgessville.
Yeah.
It's a drawback. It's a drawback to my candidacy, I will say. I think all of the candidates have pros and cons, right? There's no requirement that you live in the ward to run, obviously. Certainly live in Norwich Township. That is a requirement. And I would just ask you to look at each of the candidates sort of in a holistic way and ask yourself, okay, these are Karl's strengths, these are Karl's drawbacks. Ask yourself the same question with the other candidates. And again, ask yourself who has the potential to bring the most to the table. Okay.
With that said, and based on the answer to your last question, it sounds like you've done your research. You know what's happening at council, what they're spending money on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me makes it, and I know there's no requirement, but that to me makes it, the fact that you're doing your homework is kind of a non-issue then.
Well, thank you. I've tried to get up to speed, right? I've tried to get up to speed. Again, there's a lot to learn. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know all the issues inside and out, but yeah, I've tried to do my homework. I'll say that.
So let's talk about spending a little bit. You talked about the tax increase, and do you think that the present council or the past council has been financially responsible in their spending and what they've done?
Yes and no. I think 9.91 is too high.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that jumps out at me that I don't think was a good idea, I don't know if you're aware of that, they're spending $75,000 on outdoor exercise equipment in one of the, it's called Southwest Park. I might have that wrong, but it's a park in the town of Norwich. I think that's a little bit tone deaf, frankly, to the financial struggles that people are having in the township. It's outdoor, as I understand it. It's geared for adults. I mean, look, exercise equipment is a good thing. Exercise is obviously a positive thing, but no one's going to use that in January. I don't think. Right. It seems a little bit frivolous, that one.
It's a done deal, I believe, right?
Yeah,
I think it's already built.
I know it's in
if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's already built.
Like installed and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I
That
saw
was $302,000 total bill for that.
Oh, I think we're thinking of something else.
Okay.
I think because I saw this in the 2024 operating
Okay.
budget when I printed it out.
It must
the
be
other
something
day.
else.
I think this is over and above.
Okay, so
And
yeah.
it's another 75 grand. So, I'm not gonna, not having been on council, not knowing all of the issues inside and out like a sitting councillor or the mayor would, I'm not gonna throw stones, but that one jumped out at me, and again, I do think 9.91 is too high in terms of a tax increase.
You mentioned the hard surface, township or pavement. Are you in favor of that?
I am.
Okay.
I am. Now I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, right? Because I'm talking about fiscal responsibility. Yeah, and you have to pick and choose where you're going to spend your money. So 500,000, the math is fairly straightforward because the total operating budget, I understand, is 10 million. So that makes the math a little more straightforward. So roughly 10 million, putting aside 500,000 a year, so that's 5%. And then for 5 years, a lot of people want their gravel roads. I won't say paved, right? We need to make a distinction between paved and hard surface. So you can do tar and chip too. And obviously that's, in some cases, that might be a nice sort of compromise. I know some people have told me that, look, maintaining the gravel roads properly over time, that adds up too. And long term, I'd want to talk to a real expert on this because I'd want to be sure, but some people have told me that long term, tar and chip can actually save the taxpayer.
Okay, so you talked about the money for tar and chip. You talked about not wanting to second guess some of the councillors that have gone before you.
Yeah.
This next question requires maybe a little thought.
Okay.
I want to know how you feel about our OPP patrols. Are they doing a good job? And do you feel that pavement or tar and chip will raise the speeds on those roads?
Probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I live on a gravel road, and when we bought on a gravel road, I thought about my dog,
Yeah.
and I thought about my kids, and I thought, I don't mind living on a gravel road, right? Because there's actually a paved road right beside me. And, they're going to speed down the paved road. They're not going to, speed down my road. So that's a very valid point. In terms of the OPP, and I've been getting actually a number of people, when I go door to door, I've had a chance to do a fair amount of door to door so far. And one of the issues that's coming up a lot is speeding through town. A lot of people are concerned. I actually got a question on my Facebook page about that today too. Yeah, that's a job for the police. Are the police doing enough on that? Yeah, I'd want to sit down with them and say, guys, a lot of people are really concerned about this. What can we do better? I know in Springford, a fellow mentioned to me the other day these sort of radar, what are they called?
They're radar signs.
Radar signs.
Yeah.
That's what they're called. Yeah, they seem to make a difference.
Good.
He lived right there as you're on 13 coming into Springford, and I think they put one up very close to his house. He said it made a big difference.
Good.
So yeah, it's a concern.
In Norwich, we have a big problem. It's not about Norwich tonight. It's about Ward 1. But I'm sure what goes on in Norwich, what I see all the time, happens there as well.
Yeah.
And so we need some good patrols.
Yeah.
I just hope we've got it within our budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Recently, excuse me, I've seen a lot of signs around. We're talking about a strong mayor system.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of Noteworthy in Norwich. I write for Noteworthy in Norwich.
Okay.
And I actually spoke with Mayor Palmer about the strong mayor. He's absolutely against it. How do you feel about it?
I'm absolutely against it.
Good.
As far as I can tell, and I'm going to name names now, there's two people. There's two I shouldn't say two people. There's two elected officials in Oxford who are for it.
Oh, really?
Mayor Accioni in Woodstock, who took strong mayor
Yes,
powers,
you're right, yeah.
even though his 6 councillors voted against it, and Ernie Hardeman.
Ernie's with?
Yeah, well, I
didn't know he was on board with that.
Well, it's from the Doug Ford government.
Yes,
right?
you're right.
Yeah, it's from the Doug Ford government. I think it's a slap in the face of the councillors.
Mhm.
Like, that's what the councillors are for, right? And I know, a friend of mine emailed Ernie on this, and Ernie's response was, "We've got gridlock." And I believe this, at this point at least, is referring to development. That's where the strong mayor
Right.
powers kick in. They're not across the board. But
They're pretty broad,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think the focus is the development part of it.
Yeah, that's the focus of it. And Mr. Hardiman's email response was, "We've got gridlock. We simply have to do this because the councils are so locked in." Strong mayor powers, that kind of legislation, that's not the solution to gridlock.
Right.
Persuasion over coercion, right? That's what I say to that. And it's no, it's a bad idea. And as far as I can tell, because I know a number of friends that actually are very involved in this issue, and they've got those signs out, and they've been emailing various people, and everyone's against it except for Mayor Accioni and Mr. Hardiman, as far as I can tell.
So if you're elected, and it's one of these questions that hope it makes you blush.
Yeah?
If you're elected, would you be in favor of a proclamation making each June a Pride Month?
No.
And why not?
This is an issue, it's so divisive. And look, even before I answer that question, I want to say to everybody in the LGBTQ plus community, I know there's been hatred. I know there's been abuse. I know there's been bullying. I know there's been insults. And I condemn that. I condemn all of that wholeheartedly. Maybe this is where my experience as a lawyer comes in a little bit. I've read very carefully the case from 2015, Saginaw, Quebec. I'm saying that right. And that was a case, interestingly enough, where the town council was saying the Lord's Prayer, right, at the beginning of every meeting. And there was an atheist who would come to all the town council meetings, and he took issue. He went, I believe it was to some sort of human rights tribunal on it. It found its way all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada, right? And the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that in matters of religion, the state is to remain neutral. And that's not that long ago. That's less than 10 years ago, right? That's pretty clear. And I have to tell you, I'm a Christian, and the case was about saying the Lord's Prayer. I start each morning with the Lord's Prayer, and I end each day with the Lord's Prayer. So, that was maybe coloring my thinking on that case a little bit. But the pride issue, the pride flags, the Pride Month, in my humble opinion, is it a religious issue? It's tending towards that. I know for a lot of people it is a religious issue, and I just don't think town councils, I don't think the state in general should be walking into that. I would just say, if there's absolutely no way the state should be in any way impeding the way people live their lives, right? I mean, hopefully it's still a free enough country. What you do, with your sexuality, what you choose in that regard is absolutely your business, and we absolutely should not be pushing that on anyone else. And I think the government should just stay out of that.
Do you remember Diane Haskett? Are you familiar with that case in London?
Say that again?
Diane Haskett in London. She was the mayor.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
She refused to make a proclamation.
Okay.
And that came back to bite her real bad.
How so?
Well, they took her to court and she lost, and it cost a lot of money. I don't have all the details, but
yeah.
It is a very divisive issue, and it's one that you can't win.
Yeah. That's why I think you should just stay out of it.
Yeah.
Best you can. Yeah.
Any thoughts on how the township could attract more housing? Affordable housing.
Okay. Yeah, because we've got some of the best farmland in Ontario.
Absolutely.
Right? And I don't like the idea of building on prime farmland.
Nor do I.
Right. And this is a big country, and there's there's a lot of parts of the country where I think where we can develop housing, affordable housing too, on less prime agricultural land, and I think that should be our focus. Affordable housing, look, I mean, it's hard on young people, right? It's really, I mean, my sons age 19 and 22, are they ever going to be able to buy a home? I don't know, I really don't know. And maybe we end up subdividing our lot, maybe we do something like that. I think that's getting more and more common. It seems to me there's more and more of that happening. And in terms of, I don't know, just in terms of any development, I'm always concerned about it because I don't want to see any more agricultural land used up.
Okay, so in favor of not using up the agricultural land, and I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
If you were on council, how would you vote in favor? How would you vote when asked from a farmer or a farm family, we'd like to put another house on the main property? Not out in the field, but on the main property.
I'd have to look at the individual situation,
Okay.
right, for sure. But off the cuff, in a general way, I think I'd be in favor of that in most cases.
Many of our Amish in the community have done that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And they make it work very well.
Sure. And the idea of keeping family close and helping each other, especially as the parents get older, it's all beautiful, right? Yep.
This is going to be another one of those money spending questions. Are you in favor of completion of a rail trail through the township?
A trail.
Rail trail. There's already an abandoned rail track that I think they're planning on, or it's been mentioned about doing something with a trail along through there. How do you feel about that?
I've been on parts of the Trans-Canada Trail that come through Norwich. I remember, I think it was only once, though. It was a little bit of a drive for me. I went on it near Springford, I believe. We have a lot of places to walk and trails. I know in my area there's some really lovely trails. I don't feel a shortage of places, and I've got a dog that I like to walk every day if I can. And I don't think I'm willing to listen, willing to hear out people's concerns on that, but it doesn't strike me as a pressing problem, at least as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I can come up with a hard one then.
Okay.
Oh, I'm trying not to insult you here. Are
It
you a
would
yes
be the
man?
first time.
Are you a yes man?
I hope not.
You're ready to stand up to the council and hold your own?
Yeah. That's a big part of the reason I threw my hat in the ring. Because
Yeah.
I feel like I'm someone that can do that.
Okay. And how do you feel about having ladies on the council?
Oh, that's not an issue.
Well, in the past they've had some resistance.
Well, no. I would hope that we're past any concerns that way.
Well, I hope so too, but
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've sat in some of the meetings and seen it.
I'm sorry to hear that. No, I think that's inappropriate.
Okay, back when Larry Martin was mayor, he had a system where he had in place something that they did 3 or 4 times a year, and that was a town hall meeting. If you are elected, would you be in favor of restoring something like that, and could you put a motion forward for something like that?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I want to see is more town council meetings in the evenings. Because there's been some town council meetings that I've really wanted to go to, and look, I'm a 9 to 5 guy, sometimes it's longer, and I thought, darn it, I can't go to that meeting, I want to be there. I'd like to see more evening meetings, and I think that's sort of running along the same line.
Where do you stand on conservation? This is a global question more than a council question, or Ward 4 question. Ward 1. Right,
okay. I support conservation insofar as I absolutely support responsible stewardship. This land, these rivers, this air, this water, these are all sacred and precious gifts that are not to be taken for granted and are not to be abused. Is the climate changing? Yes. I think we had a very mild winter, and the climate changes from time to time. And I remember, when we moved out here a decade ago, a lot of people, we moved out from Milton, people said, "Oh, you're going to the snow belt, you're going to the snow belt." I'm like, "Oh, I haven't seen it, really haven't seen it." Maybe a little bit in the first couple of years. Is the changing climate man-made? I'm not so sure. The jury's still out on that in my view. And this is where I get really concerned though. Because what I see happening sometimes is a message being sent to people that we're in a climate emergency and that your very presence on this planet is part of the problem. I think maybe not in an overt way, but at least in a subtle way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that message gets sent, and I really take issue with that. I mean, that's essentially telling people the world would be better off without you, right? I mean, it's just another formulation of that, and that is absolutely objectionable. Especially, we've got record suicide rates. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. And we've got record overdose rates, and if you're saying to people, we've got a climate emergency, I've heard some people say we need to take the world population down to 2 billion, down from 8 billion to 2 billion. Well, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
Does that mean culling? Like, let's not beat around the bush.
There's some conspiracy theorists that would say that it does.
Well, how do you go from 8 billion to 2 billion? 6 billion people. Yeah, anyway, that's not a township issue, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, so let me bring this back to a township level.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves, and it just irks me, is plastic in the ocean.
Okay.
And our town council contributes to that, in that every meeting they have plastic bottles at their council meetings. That tells me two things. It tells me they don't care about the environment, and it tells me that Norwich water isn't worth drinking. Would you be in favor, if you was elected, would you be in favor to put a motion forth that we drink Norwich local water rather than plastic water or plastic bottled water that comes out of the well in Aberfoyle or wherever it comes from?
Yeah, we're on a well up at our place, and we've got the best water. My goodness, we've got good water.
We drink water right out of the tap at our place every day.
Yeah.
This is water right out of the tap.
Yeah.
And ice cubes out of the tap.
Yeah. No, it's a huge blessing. We've got wonderful air and we've got wonderful water, and that should not be taken for granted. And you raise a great point, Vic. You raise a great point. Yeah, I'd put a motion like that forward.
Excellent. We've kind of covered this one, but I want to just bring it back. Over the last couple of years, maybe longer, many of the township folks have complained about bad driving in the area. Speeding, careless driving, reckless driving, off-road vehicles on road. I know it's a police issue. How could you, or what do you see that you could do to kind of light a fire under somebody to get them going?
I'm not totally sure what you mean. Like in terms of the police?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
It's obviously them that are dropping the ball on this one, I think.
Yeah, maybe we need more resources that way. I want to, especially, this issue keeps coming up, and I want to sit down with the OPP and say, okay, how often are you in this area? How regularly are these areas getting covered? Is there a schedule? Or is it just sort of sporadic hit and miss, right?
It's a catch-22 because with social media and texting and so on, they could be at one end of town and everybody would know it in 3 or 5 minutes.
That's true.
And so there's got to be some way of solving this problem, but you're the smart one of the two in the room. You should be the one that figures it out, right?
Oh, I don't know about that, and I'm not sure I can figure it out right now. Again, maybe I've been a little bit isolated living on a gravel road.
Yeah.
And we do get people driving like idiots down our road too, and it's scary. It's ultimately the police are the ones who I would think should have the expertise on this. And I just really want to be in close contact with them, working with them. This is a problem. How can we make it better? And maybe those radar signs that you were talking about, maybe
Excellent.
more of those. They make a difference. They
Good.
really do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's kind of end this thing on a high note.
Good.
Let me ask you, and I hope the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Are you approachable? We've had some controversy in town. Jim has come around a long ways. Jim Palmer, the mayor.
Mm.
But at one point, he was just not answering his telephone and not talking to people.
Mm.
I think he's found out from experience now that he has to do that. Are you approachable?
Yes. Well, I can tell you, so many of the source of so many problems, certainly as a lawyer, is when you're not approachable, when you're not getting back to people.
Mm-hmm.
And in my law firm, we have a very strict policy. We get back to people within 24 hours, maybe 48 hours at a max in an unusual situation. But we're expected, any email, any phone call, there's going to be a response within 24 hours, right? And this saves us so much grief and so much, it saves us so many problems in the long run. And I can tell you, I'm sure you know, I ran as a provincial candidate in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
and I adopted that same policy. I can tell you, when we sold our house in Milton and moved out here, and the real estate agent we had in Milton was phenomenal. I'll give him a shout out, Jalad Jaroy. He's going to watch this, I bet. He still stays in touch with us. But I thought, this guy is the gold standard, because he was so approachable, and he still sends us Christmas cards, and we did one transaction with him 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's the way you do this, right? And people appreciate it.
Rob Ford, love him or hate him,
Yeah.
when he was mayor of Toronto, he answered everything, every single contact he answered,
Yeah.
and sometimes as late as 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like you to look right into the camera right now. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to tell everybody why they should vote for you.
Well, thank you, Vic. Well, look, maybe I'll do this the easy way right off the bat. I have a website, all right, www.karltoewsward1.com. So Karl, Karl, Toews, Toews, Ward, and then the number 1.com. So you can go on my website. There's a Facebook page, there's Instagram, there's all of that. So you can learn more about me that way. If you ever want to call me, again, being approachable, my personal cell number is, and I'm doing this intentionally, 226-883-0575. Learn about me, learn about the candidates. I'm 57 years old. I think I've got quite a bit of life experience. I've lived in various parts of the world. I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in parts of Norway, lived in various parts of Canada. I do think my life experience helps me. Sometimes it takes an outsider to understand how special this place is. It's the best place I've ever lived, and I want to hand it down to my children, in a responsible way. I want to serve my community at this point, and I believe my experience as a lawyer, my life experience, and again, seeing where I might plug into the team that's already been elected, I think I have something to offer.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was, let me get this off here. That was great.